so that more people don't necessarily need to speak.
Welcome to Anderson Japanese Gardens. This is our season-ending lecture of the 2020 lecture series. Coincidentally, it's the second lecture. Nobody will be surprised to learn that all of our events were canceled this year, but we're very fortunate and grateful that the garden was open for all to enjoy. I'm David Anderson, and tonight we will feature Tim Gruner, the Garden Curator and Director of Horticulture, on a look back at 2020 and a look ahead, give you a glimpse. We are accepting questions. They will be answered at the end of the broadcast. We're here live in the guest house here at Anderson Japanese Gardens. Please ask questions and we'll get to those at the end of the lecture. A couple highlights for the garden this year. We opened about a month late on May 29th. The attendance was pretty staggering. Starting in July, June, we were ramping up. We tried something new for the first time with online reservations as part of our COVID-friendly protocol, social distancing and what have you. July was a near record. August was a record for monthly attendance. September and October were near records. The all-time October record, which was set in 2016. Year to date, we've had just over 45,000 visitors. The garden will close on Sunday, November 8th. So we've got some bonus time, and for those of you who are not in Northern Illinois, the weather is absolutely gorgeous, and we still have quite a bit of color here at Anderson Japanese Gardens. So thank you for your patronage, thank you for your support, and thank you for being a part of the Anderson Gardens family. I'm turning it over now to Tim Gruner, Director of Horticulture and Garden Curator.
Konbanwa, and good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to communicate with you in this slightly unorthodox way. That's not how it is. So as we've done all season, we've made the most out of every opportunity that came our way, and we've given a good effort. It's been gambate the whole way through for our entire team. So peculiar season. A good season also. I want to mention that I want to say that this wonderful audience that we have here tonight, I think we're full, about 100 people, international. We've got some people in Kyoto, Taka and Aki, who've both been a part of our summer festival, and other things are on this Zoom lecture. So great to know that you're out there. And Shiho, a part of this lecture. David Munganast, who has been a great friend of the garden and a wonderful part of our Anderson Gardens tea study group, is watching from somewhere in the Tokyo area. So it's so great. Motoko and Yuichi and Naperville, thank you so much for all that you've done. It's wonderful to have you in on this Zoom lecture, and all the other people out there who help make what we do here possible. So what I'd like to do is give it's 2020. So here we are in this most unusual year, but the beginning of a new decade. And I want to look back just really briefly to give you an idea of where the garden has been in the last 40 years. So here's a super quick tour of Anderson Gardens, Anderson Gardens history. And all I need to be able to do is change this slide. There we go. So 40 years ago, 1980, this was what for those of you who know the garden, how much it has changed. 1985, here's a picture with John Anderson and Hoichi Kurisu, designer and builder of the garden. This over 40-year collaborative partnership between these two gentlemen. As the guest house, the building that we're in now, is being constructed. Such a marvelous space, and it has evolved so wonderfully over the years, and has become a center of so many events. 1990, this is the West Waterfall. This is probably one of the earliest shots that the water was flowing, and the construction of the boulders was completed in 1989, and lots of planting happened in 19. Is right here, and I just want to verify with Katie that you can see that cursor. Is it? Can you see that, Katie? Yes. Okay, great. So there's Hoichi right there doing some pruning. Here is Hamada Kenichiro, son of the Daiku, the woodworker who built the gazebo, and so they're just about to begin that construction. And here's actually Hamada Masahiro and Kenichiro looking at the lumber, and you can see that construction has started with the installation of the posts. A few days later, and then of course over time that space evolved into what you see here, this wonderful image of the garden this fall. 1995 was there was no big news to report. It was that particular year we were just sort of in a garden maintenance, that entire area of time. It was more of a garden maintenance period. By 2000, the construction of the Garden of Reflection is ongoing. This is an early image, probably from early spring of 2000. This is over in the area we call the baptism area. You can see the West Waterfall in the distance. And of course, looking across the pond at another image taken just this fall, how much it has matured. This image is standing on the Giboshi Bridge, looking downstream, the year 2005. this is a very concerned me at the beginning of this project. It was an immense undertaking, and this is just when things were about to get going. A few days later, the site looked like this, with excavation behind the steel sheet piling that was driven in sometime in the early 2000s. Here's the original retention wall back here, giant concrete blocks from an old factory. We excavated behind the wall and then cut the steel out underwater. And at this point, I was very, very fretful, because if a big storm came, this soft, loose sand and gravel under these very large cottonwoods, the possibility that those would fall over was rather terrifying. But it wasn't but 5 days worth of rock setting, and this is where we were. So we made it. The trees survived without moving at all. And so we're super happy that everything worked well. And then the gate commenced construction with, again, Hamada Masahiro and his team from Tokyo area. And then another shot from this fall, what that space has evolved into. 2010 brought us the construction of the pavilion. And what an amazing upgrade that was from the tent that used to be there, and the summer festival, which has been so marvelous. The pavilion has been an incredible addition to the garden. 2015, the first meeting of the Anderson Japanese Gardens Tea Study Group. And this is a group of the early people who were involved, and really our sensei, our mentor, our teacher, Kimiko Gunji, right here with the cursor. Amazing woman. We're so fortunate to have her. Really, we're blessed to have her energy here at Anderson Japanese Gardens. It was really the beginning of the guest house and the tea house really coming to life here. She and her programs, our tea ceremonies, our workshops in the guest house. Really, these buildings went from being museum kind of pieces to actually living cultural objects where people had the opportunity to be inspired in positive things that come out of tea. You know, we learned that tea ceremony is not really about tea, and it's not really a ceremony. It's really about life training. And so we've been so blessed to have Gunji Sensei's guidance through all these years. And here's David Munganast right here, who's watching from somewhere in Japan, Tokyo area, I believe. Here's Gunji Sensei in one of the events, the Rikyuki, the Seno Rikyu, the great tea master who did so much to move Japanese culture in the way of this wabi-sabi architecture, and this sort of the building that I'm sitting in. And actually, this is the Tokonoma, the alcove space, which is behind me. Rikyu's insight and aesthetic vision was such a major part of what shaped tea ceremony and really Japanese culture and behavior. Here are some of our tea students presenting tea to the public. (2015) was also the year we installed the large pagoda back at in the Garden of Reflection, and this amazing group of people, all gardeners here at Anderson Japanese Gardens. I would like to say at this point that I work with an amazing group of people who are passionate and skilled and care about the garden and each other, and it's just a great pleasure to be with all of them on a regular basis. So fun. Something we discovered while putting this pagoda together with this giant stainless steel threaded rod that sticks through the entire thing and is embedded into a concrete. Oop, I'm understanding the video is not playing. Okay, maybe we'll have to skip video. Well, that was a super fun thing that I hope to share with you at some point in time. Can you still see me talking?
I can now.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Getting little snippets of what's happening.
Okay, so I'll go to the next slide. Oh, there's the same one again. Is it working, Katie? Okay, we're gonna abandon ship on the video. Abandon ship, but don't go away. Okay, so we'll skip past the fun folly of musical things that happen in the garden. We try. We're gonna go right into roof repairs, which 2019 late. Ian, one of our gardeners who's been here since I think 2001, he led us in the effort to repair the roof on the East Waterfall pump house, and you can see that it really needed it. So these are the kind of things that happen in a garden that they call me the head of horticulture, but really it's we end up doing so much more. We ended up resheeting the entire roof. Putting on the sawn cedar shingles. It wasn't long after that we had a pretty substantial snow, and it was time to not do roofing work in the garden anymore. Moving on through the winter, we did have some nice snows. Nothing record-setting, and it wasn't nearly as cold as it was in previous years. But we did have the snow viewing tea ceremony, the Yukimi Chakai, at the guest house on February 8th, and this was close to one of our last events before the COVID hit. There might have been one other. Gunji Sensei has felt in the amazing opportunities that she presents to people of all kinds that come to see the tea ceremony, to learn about the tea ceremony. Most people are curious and find out that tea ceremony is so much deeper and richer than just a bowl of tea and a nice sweet. So one of the things we'll often do when we do these seasonal ceremonies are really a series of tea ceremonies for the public. And then on Sunday, we'll do a workshop. And this is a Onigiri workshop. The rice, sometimes in triangles, sometimes in a ball, sometimes with little bits of things inside, the salted plum, all those kind of things. And here is Sensei leading a group through their own construction of their own onigiri. Very popular. And then I think maybe this was the last reached its hand down and said no more. This was the Rikuki Kai, which again is the celebration of the life of Seno Rikyu, and again presented with the participation of the Anderson Japanese Garden Tea Study Group, who until this year met in the guest house, and bringing this building alive with the learning of tea, the culture of tea, the way of tea. Sensei has embraced that technology, and we are moving forward in the best possible way that we can, given the conditions that we have. We had a visit in February, actually, so I guess I'm going back in time here a little bit. Kagami-san, the craftsman who led the team that replaced the tatami in this building just about 18 months ago, was here for a visit. He did a measurements for a new tatami upstairs. We're going to make a slight change so that we can do the winter style tea in that up. And here is Kagami-san doing that, taking care of that measurement. It's always a great pleasure to be with Kagami-san and drink a couple cans of IPA. February 27th, the inner garden of the guest house looked like this. And kind of one of my indicators for where we are and how the season's progressing is how big the pile of snow is. This snow slides off the roof, and sometimes, as you saw in the one image, it can be really quite tall, sometimes 3 or even 4 feet tall on a cold, snowy winter. But when it gets down to about this much by this time of the year, I start to get the feeling that, you know, it won't be long, and all the dormant life out in the garden is going to be emerging, and the migrant birds will return. And so when this gets small in late February, early March, I know that times are changing, and I would say that after a long winter for the good. So during that early spring, we built a new office in the hort shop to get me a little more privacy over there and to get myself out of the middle of the operation, which was a success. We're still picking away at it, but here's Yuli, who worked on this a lot with his dad, who did some volunteer work for us here this year. And here is Yuli's dad out. We're doing a little bit of work repairing some damage, some old rot on the East Waterfall pump house again. So this pump house got a lot of attention after sitting for a long time waiting. We actually had the waterfalls running quite early. The spring it was a relatively warm spring. It was wet but warm, and it was wonderful. It's always wonderful to see these waterfalls back up and running. You can see the service berries are just beginning to bloom up here on the waterfall. Some things, the hostas are starting to grow here. You can see that in the foreground. So it is a landscape coming to life. It's always wonderful to be in the garden with all that sort of exuberant expression of energy that sat dormant for so long. And yet we still had time for some snow. This was, I believe, early April. And, you know, look at how wonderful it is. There was still, you can barely see that there's a little bit of the buds were starting to open on things. It was so wonderful to see the garden with all the tender buds unfolding with a little pile of fluffy snow on top. It was kind of one of those experiences that come along once in a great while that you have to stop and say, this is pretty special. It wasn't long, April 22nd, and this is, you know, things melted off, and you can see the service berries are just ready to bloom here in the inner garden of the guest house. It's a marvelous time to be in the garden. I happened to be up on the roof, checking the roof to make sure everything was okay. And so here's an uncommon view of the garden from the roof at the guest house. It's really cool to be able to see the artistry of Hoichi's layout of this really amazing space with this meandering path and its geometric components that connect so well with the building. So all of these things were up to, well, they're really going on, and you know, no matter what, they're going on. We have garden team out there making, cleaning the garden and getting all the pumps running and getting everything ready. Getting things ready for the big projects of 2020, which was more exposed aggregate paving. We did that bunch last year, and it improved access and guest experience so much for so many of the people who come here who have mobility issues, whether it's people in walkers or wheelchairs or even walking with a cane, and also people that have baby strollers. With the exposed aggregate concrete in the right places, it really improved the garden a lot for people that really need a little extra help. And this year's project, we went from the east parking lot to the pavilion, and then that was the main area that we did initially. And then we also did the area back in the Garden of Reflection near what we call the Huichi Creek Bridge. So it was a really, I think, very successful for our visitors. And it started, one other thing I need to mention too is that in big flood events, a lot of those paths washed out substantially. And here's a picture that illustrates how much damage was done in the flood of 2018. We think that with the exposed aggregate concrete in place, that the garden's vulnerability to these major flood events is greatly decreased. I know that even in small 2-inch rainfalls, it's been an amazing amount of labor that we've saved by having the concrete in the right places. We are super thankful for all of our donors who have contributed so much. This was a total of $180,000 project over the last 2 years. And without the generosity of all the people that you see on this list, this couldn't have happened. So we are grateful to our garden supporters for giving us the ability to make the garden better and more successful, accessible and successful to a wide array of people. This Turtle Island planting, and you can see here's the turtle's head, and there's a flipper and a little bit of a tail, and you'll see this motif used in a couple areas of the garden. But we needed to open this space up. This is the pavilion support building here in the back. Here's where the restrooms are located. We needed to open this space up with the Tuesday evening concerts for the festivals that we have. There's really kind of a traffic jam back there, and we were unable to get really effectively our utility carts through that area. So some things needed to change, and it started with removal of, take out some trees that had been there a long time. Regretfully have to cut them down and take them out. We saved bits and pieces of wood, hopefully to someday maybe make something out of. But we had to sort of back up and start a little bit from scratch in some areas. So getting everything out of the way, starting with a clean slate, and making the area better, more functional, and hopefully as aesthetic as it was when we started, or better. We relocated corner of the lot, but it was a fantastic rock, and this top you'll see in another picture here in a little bit. We were at the maximum mobility of this machine that was lifting it. Ramon Acosta is our skid loader operator, and him and his guys do a marvelous job of helping us out. Here's a guy, this is Ramon and this machine, who has actually worked with some great garden builders, Japanese garden builders, Hoichi, John Powell, and Sadafumi, the curator of the Portland Japanese Garden. He's worked with all those guys, and so he knows what he's doing, and it's a great asset to have a guy like that on your team. So we're place. We widen the path in spots to improve accessibility for the carts that we utilize to carry sometimes our guests around on, and also to move materials via our little utility carts through the garden. And so we did some adjusting. Sometime later, here's that rock in place. We're just starting now to lay out the stone insets inside that will be contained within the exposed aggregate. Where the grades are being calculated by the concrete guys. Like this. The idea is to improve the connection between the architectural part, which is the building, and the landscape. The concrete doesn't allow water to percolate into it, so the water runs off of the concrete, and we needed to have a place for that to go where it could be carried away. We did have a low area, a little cattail marsh on the south side of the pavilion, but we really needed to remove the cattails and regrade that area to get down to a drain here at the end. So we started there. We started with getting all the cattails out, and let me see here. There we go. We then lined it with landscape fabric, put in a drain tile, erratic little pebbles. And so it works. The water drains freely now, and we don't have the little marsh back there, which was probably a little bit of a mosquito creator, but not a real big problem. But now it drains readily. So we did the exposed aggregate work from the east parking lot. This is the beginning of the work from the old exposed aggregate path that led to the bridge, all the way to the pavilion. The concrete guys have the grades all set. The forms are going up. The blocks are all put in place at the correct elevation, formed up to do this little pour first. And here is the area from near the pavilion support building over to the pavilion. This would be the southeast corner of the pavilion. You can see the reinforcing mat. The next slide will illustrate what's going on right here. And that's what you see there. So all the blocks of stone are set at the right elevation, and they're covered with duct tape to protect them from the concrete, the fine, the cream on the top of the concrete. And all that's happening, and the garden looks like this. This is that really wonderful period when the serviceberry are in nearly full bloom. You can see the petals are just starting to fall. This is just a wonderful time to be in the garden when the petals are just beginning to fall on the serviceberry. It's kind of magical, really. And then the same day, back at the looking into the Karisansui, the raked gravel garden of the guest house. And then the concrete arrives. And here is Anthony Tarara from AA Construction, a marvelous group of guys to work with. We work really well together. They do fantastic work. They're adaptive, and they pride themselves on quality. And the concrete is poured, the troweling is done, and then once the concrete sets up a little bit, then it's the cream, or the very top layer of cement, is washed off, exposing the aggregate. And the aggregate are the pebbles that give the concrete strength and body. Anthony has great help here on this day. So things are starting to happen. You can see progress. Later on, here's the top of that big boulder I was telling you about. So I'm actually have the camera almost sitting on top of it, looking down over the work that was completed. Working on the garden, so we're not distracted by all the construction. I try to take care of the construction so that they can focus on taking. Been here since 2001, and one of a handful of really talented people that do marvelous work out there in the garden. Here's Yuli, one of our youngest guys and newest member on the crew, also working on a tree, and his skill levels are increasing rapidly. The guest house, a peek out of the guest house on May 8th yielded this image. What a marvelous space. Of the guest house, those tender spring leaves, just, you know, exuding energy. It's just such a great place to be, a great thing to feel, the emerging energy after that long winter dormancy. On May 18th, the concrete was pretty much completed up near the pavilion, and we then turned our eye to the Huichi Creek area, which was another washout prone, a problem area in rain and floods, and then which then made it very difficult for wheelchairs and such to get through there, because it was so hard to pack the gravel back in place once it's been ripped out. And so this is the bridge that most of us knew, this particular format. But it's not the original style of that space. I don't have any really great pictures of how this used to be, but originally, and I'll show you one picture here shortly, people would walk through like this and have to come this way and then be able to exit the bridge. Originally, this area in here, the water was moving through. And same thing with this area right here, the water was moving through. So this bridge really, in a sense, didn't fit anymore. It wasn't the original intent of the space. It was changed to this format because on a bridge that looks like this, which is this very bridge, you can't get a golf cart over it, which is how we move our materials around. And then it's also how we are able to get our guests that need some help with, you know, a ride on our guest cart. Most of us know the bridge to be like. And so I wanted to get back and redoing the bridge. I wanted to get back closer to the original feel. Well, it required some changes. Here's my very loose drawing illustrating instead of the slabs of the bridge, my fingers could be actually the individual boards. Instead of being offset so far, we moved the offset to a much lesser degree. And then I had some ideas on how the stone could be arranged to dissipate the geometry of the bridge out into the space. So we began demolition, and then during demolition, getting careful measurements on elevation. We wanted it to be sitting at the same point, the same place up and down. Well, so we wanted to maintain that. We took careful measurement. Excuse me. We had I had points of index so that we knew where things should line up on. One of the things we wanted to change was this set of double posts right here in the middle, right in the middle of the stream, and I wanted to get those moved out so that when you stood on the bridge, you had a free view without any posts in the middle of the stream. And so that was another one of the desires in rebuilding the bridge. So this is a man pondering a mocked up bridge. And we mocked it up. We had a couple different post sizes, a true 4x4, and these are nominal 4x4s, which are really 3.5 by 3.5. And then with input from Mr. John Anderson and David Anderson, we discussed what would be the best look for this bridge, and then we moved forward. So this was the mock-up to determine like what would really be optimal for this bridge. And so once we had a decision, we moved. Here's a view of the mock-up showing now how the creek flowed freely under the bridge without any posts in the way. Aesthetically, I like it a lot more, and functionally, it's a lot easier to clean out under that bridge in the fall. Originally, there was a dam right here, and the water cascaded over this dam. We had to break that dam out of there. Here's a chunk of it sitting right here, so that we could actually get the So this beat up piece of paper was actually probably the most important piece of paper in my life at that point. And it's the diagram that illustrates the posts, their locations, and I learned this from a Hungarian trained in Japanese style, which greatly demystified how these buildings are put together, like this guest house. And what I found out from David Shipos, who's been really a great guy to work with in so many ways, as we restore buildings on the property. The buildings are laid out on a grid with each post numbered. So there might be an A, B, C, and D line, and then a numbered grid. So this is because there's no post here. This is post B1, and here's post B2. I'm understanding I froze a little bit there, but I think anything that I say you'll be able to recoup. So here's a B1 and here's B2. Here is post C1 and C2. Armed with this basic information about the posts and the locations and how long they needed to be to reach the pond bottom or the stream bottom, then I could go to the shop and begin construction of the actual posts that we'll use on the bridge. And so here they are, all lined up together so that I could make sure that all the holes where the rails would go through were all in the exact location. And so that if I keep things true and plumb, they should line up in the end. And so here they are drilled, and here's their post number. Here's B2, and I put a west on there so that I wanted to make the best side of each post visible. Be seen, which is the same thing that I learned from working with Japanese style woodworkers. You make the most of each piece of wood. And here are the posts with the beams mortised in. Actually, it's more of a dado to give them extra strength. And then they were then screwed with long ceramic coated lag screws to really, really tighten things up. And then we were able to go out into the garden after we made piers for concrete with lots of rebar. The stream bottom in that location, by the way, is concrete. It's about 4 to 5 inches thick, and that was installed probably that was 1999 or it was probably 1999 during the construction of the Garden of Reflection. That is how we anchored the brackets that held the posts to the concrete. Stainless steel rods, which are bent on the end, and then there's a whole bunch of concrete gets poured into here. And just to give you an idea, one of those looks like this. So here's one of those stainless steel brackets. These are leftovers from the 2016 zigzag bridge project here at the garden, made for us by our friends at Horticultural Metals. So here now we have the first post and beam setup installed. We use the classic old 3-foot by 4 foot by 5 foot triangle, which makes a perfect true angle right here, a 90-degree angle, to line up where the other post should go. Keeping everything level, we used a hydraulic jack to level things up dead on. And then the bracket was bolted to the bottom of the post. Stainless threaded rod and construction epoxy. And so you can see those brackets in various sizes being used to fasten these posts to the concrete floor of the stream. On top of those concrete piers I mentioned earlier, we bolted down 6x6s so that these wooden 6x6s, so that these deck boards would have something to screw into to keep them really tightly in place. Never underestimate the power of a man wearing rubber boots. That's worth a sip of sake right there. And that gentleman helped me cut this. What do you say? We scribed this deck board to fit this rock at the edge of the pond, and I'm thankful to all the woodworkers that I've been able to witness in the past to help. And again, here was the basic design, and with the stone that essentially functions as a way of projecting the geometry of the architectural object, the bridge, out into the space around it, so that there's like this kind of two-way flow of, you know, kind of nature and stone in and geometry. And so with that plan, then we were able to start laying things out and just to see how they would look. And once that was satisfied with the look, then we had to find a way of indexing those pieces so that we could put them back into place, because we still had to get in there and excavate all this material out. The concrete guys still haven't been here to do the excavation. So the bridge is basically complete. And you can see this line, pencil line right here. This is a pencil line. This is a string line. Forget about that right now. This is a pencil line. And we had a line that was bridge deck, and it carries all the way through here. And then from the base of the bridge, although this slide doesn't show this clearly, from the base of the bridge, then all I had to do was measure how many inches out this piece was, how many inches out this piece was. And then I would then have a plan so that when the concrete guys came, and the moment is intense because there's no time to waste when concrete is being poured, things could be put back into place, leveled up to the proper grade, and then concrete poured around them. And so the bridge had to be strong enough. And I'm going to try video one more time, and we'll see what happens. I apologize in advance. I don't have a good feeling about this, but if it works, it'll be a real COVID miracle. Okay, here we go. Let's see what happens. Do we have video, Katie? This is kind of herky-jerky. Sorry about the herky-jerky. It's kind of like claymation, I understand. So the bridge had to hold all that up, and it worked. So that was super exciting to find out that it worked, because whoops, sorry. On to the next. And so the concrete was, this is what had to go over the bridge, full of concrete. Of course, they took material out when they were prepping the grades. Let's just see how this works. Style. We may have an internet speed issue here. What a great machine there. Again, the guys from AA Construction doing an amazing job for us out there. Whoop, sorry. And then the washing of the concrete, which is so fun. I hope you get a sense of what this is like. Well, it's like magic. It's like when you put sod down. All of a sudden, you go from dirt to green, and it looks like regular old concrete cream to the beautiful exposed aggregate. And then not long after things were cleaned up and a little bit of soil brought in, the garden is beginning, the bridge in the space is beginning to come into its own. I still need to build the rails for this thing, which will be a 2-inch oak dowel on the top, but and then smaller ones below, but that's going to be a winter project. So that'll have to wait till next year for you to see that. Pollinator Garden, which really was replacing the degraded prairie planting along the creek, which was original to the site from probably 2000 or 2001. And we were really fortunate to have this gentleman, a real plantsman and a real plant guru, really. I mean, his philosophy of plants and plantings is marvelous. He's done some major works, lectures widely. Mr. Roy Diblick from Wisconsin. And so Roy laid out the project for us, and then we had guys plant it. Roy came back a few weeks later to take a look at see how things were going, make a few subtle adjustments, and over time that space will continue to evolve. And again, we could not have done that pollinator garden without the support of the people that you see on the screen. The support of the community is incredibly important in the work that we do here. The more resources that we have to work with, we're committed to doing the best that we can with them to make this place better all the time so that it can really impact the lives of people more and more. The better and better we make it, the more and more it can impact people in a positive way. We think, like, in a sense, the better the garden gets, the less you have to say about it, because in effect it speaks for itself. Very COVID cautious. We were the entire way through. Professor Kendall Brown from University of California at Long Beach, California State actually, at Long Beach. Here, sitting outside the Ingawa is Miss Yensu Chi from the Art Institute of Chicago, and she's the new curator of Korean art there at the Art Institute. So it was wonderful to have these three. They stayed in the guest house. And here they are practicing their raking stylings right here at Anderson Japanese Gardens. Professor Brown has done so much for Japanese gardens. He was one of the instigators and past president of the North American Japanese Garden Association, an amazing scholar of Japanese gardens and Japanese art, amongst possibly being the person who has seen more Japanese gardens in the world than anyone in history. And he's right here at Anderson Japanese Gardens. The Koi Whisperer brought some fish to us, and here she is, Mary Ellen, in the Garden of Reflection, talking to some of our docents. Some fish have been just released. Here's one of the little beauties, getting ready to find a new home here at Anderson Japanese Gardens. So we worked to build our koi stocks back up. We had a visit from Professor Shozo Sato, one of the early founders of Japan House, an amazing person, incredible skill in many areas of Japanese culture. And then, of course, Professor Kimiko Gunji picked up where he left off and took it to another level. So what an amazing dynamic duo of Japanese culture down there in University of Illinois at Champaign. And aren't we lucky to have access to such wonderfully talented people who are willing to share? Here is Professor Sato standing at the tokonoma with Mr. John Anderson and this wonderful scroll that Sato himself created. So the calligraphy, this big message, it's right here. Translates to when the opportunity presents itself, you have to steal the opportunity. You have to take the opportunity quickly because opportunities don't present themselves every day. And so this is kind of an important part of the way of tea, in effect, is that these moments only come one time. Sometimes these opportunities only come once. And so you have to make the most of them. You have to respect the opportunity and make the most of it. And so it's wonderful to have such beautiful piece of work by a skilled calligrapher, and just to have Professor Sato, some of his work here is a wonderful thing. And the guest house, later that very same day, I took this picture just to give a sense of space. We had a visit from a company called Aquafina in Detroit, Michigan. These people right here on the screen build marvelous gardens in the Midwest and beyond. They've built gardens in India and Costa Rica. Really an amazingly talented bunch of people. This guy right here, Daryl Toby, an old friend and just a really talented. This garden for 2 days to find some inspiration and maybe find a better way of doing a few things in the work that they do. It was great to have our guy Nicholas Flores be able to communicate with, he speaks fluent Spanish, and be able to communicate with Daryl's team, many of whom are Hispanic, and it's just great for those guys to be able to, skilled people that are able to talk to each other without any language barriers. Earl gesturing towards the big stone pagoda, which he found for us in China on a trip there in 2014. Yeah, Daryl's mark is out there. All the cut granite, the flame finished granite that we're using in the garden right now is because Daryl is able to get that for us. Something really exciting, I'm really jazzed up about, super excited. There are 4 people, 2 docents, and then Floyd Hamlin and Carolina Hamlin of Taliesin, Frank Lloyd Wright's home and studio in Spring Green, Wisconsin. Floyd is a professor of architecture there, part of the Taliesin School of Architecture. Carolina is the program director for Taliesin. They're both Taliesin fellows and have actually of doing collaborative programming with the folks at Taliesin. We had a great day. They've so loved the garden. And we also had a nice guided tour by Jerry Heinsroth and Mary Beth at the Laurent House, the Frank Lloyd Wright Usonian Hemicycle House, just down the street from us here at the garden, who we also do collaborative programming with. So super exciting this to have them here and to dream of a future when we get through COVID that we can do things together. What we thought of is, Huichi talks about, Huichi Kurisu, the garden's designer and builder, we talk about all the positive distractions in the landscape that slowly strip away all the stress of the day and allow you to just move through the garden. And I suggested, I felt that in Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin and at the Loren House, the architecture does the same thing. There's so many little surprises that take away your preoccupation with whatever it might be. And, you know, Lord knows we all have a lot of them right now in this strange time that we're living in. But these spaces have a way of stripping away that kind of baggage. So we think that they fit really well together, and there's the potential for great things in the future. Small projects pop up. The drain, this is the basin at the main, the beach, the cobble beach in the pond strolling garden. The drain was misbehaving itself really for a couple of years, and finally we said we got to do something about it. We couldn't clear it out. We couldn't do anything about it. We tried lots of things. We replaced the entire drain. So a little trenching project. We made some interesting discoveries along the way. Now we have a system that I think is going to last for a long time out there. Here's the little overflow drain, and we dress it up with, with some concrete and some mortar dye and a few rocks, and hopefully it looks like it has been there forever and is a part of nature. Soundscapes for strolling was a really fun thing that happened here. So we had musicians of many types, from gypsy jazz to atmospheric sort of Asian sounds, bamboo flute, other things. And the idea was just for a sort of background music to enjoy in the garden. This is a result of what I've come to call the Ken Brown ripple effect. And that the idea that these gardens were not built just for meditating in or just for quiet time. There were times when there was celebration, and there were times when there was music. And so we wanted to introduce, based on Professor Brown's research, that these gardens were active places. They were places of music. We wanted to increase the amount of opportunities for appropriate music in the garden. Tuesday evenings is one kind of way of doing that. This is another kind. It's more atmospheric. It's more like background sound for moving through the garden. And in this slide, Julianne and Graham, a couple of marvelous musicians from Chicago, were creating some beautiful sounds with some spoken word poetry. It really went over well. And then we had a visit from the staff at Japan House. Jennifer Gunji, Professor Kimiko Gunji, our Gunji Sensei's daughter, is now the director of Japan House. Here's David Anderson right here. Satomi, the calligrapher, who I hope to do some studying with, and I hope they came up here to spend the day in the garden. It was a beautiful experience. Another amazing connection and opportunity. A really wonderful organization, the people at Japan House. So 2020 was a year of really unusual challenges. It was a year that kept us from many things, but also it was a year where we discovered that there were also some silver linings. We saw people getting out into nature. As David mentioned earlier, garden visits and getting out into nature, and then getting out here to the garden was a safe a thing as could be done in this COVID environment. And so I think kind of a reawakening for people to slow down a little bit. You don't need to necessarily have everything programmed every night of your life, and enjoy quiet nature, and in this case, the beautiful garden here. This image. So we have the winter coming, and I look forward to winter. Actually, I love the snow, and I love getting out in it. But I know that a lot of people aren't fond of it. I think you have to take nature on its own terms and get the right clothes and go out and interface with it. Right now, things like this bloodroot are sitting dormant in the soil. They will go through and what a beautiful thing they will be to see. We are 5 full moons away from this happening. So keep an eye on the moon, know where it is, and it helps. It always has helped me get through long periods. When you look at the moon cycle, know where it is, know what it's doing, and know that on the 5th full moon from right now, this flower will be emerging from the soil. And the fish will be back swimming freely in the West Waterfall. And it'll be great to be out there. Let's hope it's a better world for us to be able to shake hands freely and give faces and communicate more clearly. But whatever it is, we'll deal with it and we'll persevere through it all. So it's been a great pleasure being with all of you tonight. I wish I could see you and hug and shake hands and hear your voices and see your faces. But I can feel your presence here, and I'm touched by your willingness to spend time with us here. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Arigato gozaimashita. And we look forward to seeing you here at the garden sometime. Now, I think there might be some questions. Are there any questions?
Go ahead and type them into Q&A
If you have any questions.
Say that again because you froze.
If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A bar now. And then and Katie's going to help me with some technology here.
Hi, everyone.
And there's Katie right there. Katie West,
Hi.
Program Director here at Anderson.
Okay, we've got a question.
We have one. No, we have, yes, there is a
All
question.
right.
Here we go.
What happened to the koi that you needed to replace them? What? Never, never. Oh, what happened to the koi that you needed to replace them?
Well, a question: what happened to the koi that we needed to replace them?
What tragedy occurred?
There was a substantial tragedy, and it was very sorry that we had a malfunction with a pump, and it effectively drained the pond out, and we saved some of the fish. But thankfully we saved some. Those fish are very special to me because they did survive. But so sadly, we've had to rebuild things in that area. Question: what happens over the winter? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to do as much as we can. If it's warm enough, we'll be out in the garden pruning. We have a few little projects, some drainage things, maybe a some rebuilding of some pond edging. It all depends on what the weather's going to do next. So we do painting, we do tool reconditioning. We still have to finish the office and the workshop. We have some tea equipment to build for Professor Gunji. So we have lots of things to do in the winter, and we will figure a way out. We'll find work no matter what. Okay. All right. I'm learning how to operate this thing here.
Did the baby koi in the pond by the waterfall survive?
Did the baby koi in the pond by the waterfall survive? We know there are still some baby koi out there. And we will be moving those koi into the bigger pond, the Garden of Reflection pond. Actually, we're going to do that Monday. We're open through Sunday. We will open that on Monday. We'll move the fish on Monday, and then they'll spend the winter in there. So yeah, I think we had some successes there. All right.
What materials do you use to create your paths?
So what materials do we use to create the paths? Well, as you saw, some of them are concrete. The rest of the paths are primarily crushed limestone. We try to use the gray color, but the gray color is getting very difficult to get around here. So sometimes it has ended up being more of the yellow color, but it has worked. It has worked, but I would prefer to find more gray in the future.
We've got a personal preference question. Do you drink your sake warm or cold?
I like sake at nearly any temperature. The question was, what temperature do I drink it? And actually, there's a time for cold sake and a time for warm sake. And right now, this is about room temperature sake, and it tastes fantastic.
So we have a couple more questions here. How many gardeners do you currently have on staff? Do you take volunteer gardeners?
So the question, I don't know if everybody heard that. How many gardeners do you have currently on staff? And what I will say is that during the season, we have about the equivalent of 7 full-time. And that's from Wendy Beckman out in Pennsylvania. We have about, hi Wendy, and we have about 7. This time of the year, we're down to really about 4 gardeners, and we'll go through the winter this year with 4 gardeners. So there's a lot of guys to keep busy. But we'll find work to do, and it's an ambitious and creative and talented crew. So we find ways of making things happen.
We have a question from Carolyn. Why is there always water on the gravel area above the beach?
Why is there always water on the gravel area? From Carolyn Arevalo, gravel area above the beach. Is there a broken pipe or something? And the answer is no. There is not a broken pipe. That is actually spring water that is found its way out in that point. That water came out all last winter, and when no irrigation was turned on, so there's no broken pipe. That's actually one of those small projects. If the weather holds, we're going to run a drain tile over to another drain tile. The springs used to pop up over by the bench by the beach basin. We tiled all that and brought the water down to the pond, but now it's popping up in that location. So actually, we may be tackling that in the next 2 weeks. That's a good question, Carolyn.
Do Japanese maples?
Deborah, do the Japanese maples need much pruning? And the answer is, it all depends. And if you've got a space where they can just grow, it's okay to let them grow and just garden, we can't really do that. Reality is that this garden is a dense composition with lots of plants. You can't let any of them really become rambunctious, because then they're blocking the light to other plants. So we have to be very conscious of scale and composition, how the plants relate to each other and how they feel to a human viewer. We want this to feel like humans are a part of this, not like we want people to, when they walk in the garden, it's part of the style, is to feel that as a person, they are 100% a part of the nature of the garden.
So Michael asks, are the boulders sourced locally?
Are the boulders sourced locally? There was a time when you could source boulders locally, but that time is probably long gone. These come from the boulders in the garden. They're all glacial erratics. They were all drugged from somewhere further north. And a lot of them now come from the area near the terminal moraine of the Wisconsinian glacial epoch, which didn't bury this part of northern Illinois in glaciers, but further up towards Elkhart, Wisconsin, and up towards over towards Madison. So that's where most of the boulders come from now when we need boulders.
People are asking about sake. Here's your sake. You want to show
This is the sake that has been
presented.
It's been.
Do you like it dry or sweet? Ted's got a lot of questions about your sake.
All I can say, this is not a dry sake. It's
How do
not.
you like it?
I like it. I like good sake of many kinds. It's like,
All forms.
yeah, I like all kinds of
Should
sake.
we do a little more for?
Yeah, sure, David. That'd be great. I appreciate it.
I say we
Thank
move
you.
all lectures.
Here's a question from Motoko Izumi, who has been instrumental in bringing the Kyoto craftsmen to Anderson Japanese Gardens, for which we're very appreciative of. Wondering about the COVID pandemic. Is there anything that the gardeners need in terms of space for their mind to rest? Well, that's a great thought, and I think we all need space in our minds, and I think that's one thing that a garden can do, is to allow all the baggage to be dumped and just focus on what's out there and create space. So much of what we deal with at the garden is about space, and Huichi has taught us about the Japanese concept of ma, which is it's kind of a hard thing to define, and there's many different ways of looking at it, but it's like it's emptiness that's not empty, emptiness that is something. And so the idea of creating space is important, whether it's and I think that in the garden it's a good a space as any to find a space in your own mind. And that's part of like tea ceremony thought is strip away everything that's unnecessary and get down to just the very basic things, letting your senses all become fully engaged. And the only way that they can, and so that you are the most receptive, is that if you are open and your mind is quiet. So in the beginning of the tea ceremony, we do a ritual cleansing of both our hands, our physical self, and then our spiritual self. We, as the tea masters say, we sweep away the dust of the world from our minds, and so that you enter the tea room open and receptive. And so, yeah, there's space out there to be had for the mind. I think that's what really makes the garden work. And then another question: what would be our most aspiring project for 2021? Well, we're still working through what that could be. We have a dream of rebuilding the Giboshi Bridge with new rails and posts. We actually have the funds laid out and ready to go to rebuild the South Gate, which is one of the early gates built by Hamada Masahiro in the old pond strolling garden. So we're looking forward to rebuilding that.
A little bit about what that entails. That's a major project down in Sequoia.
Sure. David Anderson asked me to talk a little bit about what that really is. And so these structures were built with the posts set in concrete in the ground. That structure, the South Gate, was built in 1985. The posts are now rotten. So what we need to do, just as we've done with the round gazebo and the little waiting area for tea at the tea house, the machiai, we take those buildings completely apart, and then David, I say we, but really David is just directing the whole thing. He's the maestro. I am a support player in this event. And everybody needs help, let's face it. And so we recondition the posts, we scribe and do joinery to put new post bottoms on, cut out all the rot. The whole thing goes onto a foundation now. This is an improvement over the original way. The posts will be sitting on rocks so that they can't conduct moisture and then rot again. We believe that the work that we're doing will last hopefully 100 years. So the entire gate will be reconstructed, respectfully using the original materials and every place that we can. Of course, the shingles will be new, and then we'll redo the fences that flank the gate. So right now we're looking at those things. We're also the potential for, if funding comes through, to do a little more of the exposed aggregate work. Those kind of things. So we got, there's a lot of things we could do here. And further off in the future, we want to rebuild the viewing house at the pond strolling garden and redo some more of the pond edge. So there's lots of things that that we could, that will make the garden a better place and create a better reaction for the people that come here to visit us. And so I think we're probably close to
Yeah, just let's quickly hear.
a couple more questions.
Is there leakage that needs to be addressed to the water in the Reach Garden?
And the answer, Ted, is yes, there is leakage in there. And that's going to require, there's leakage in the inner garden, and there's been a wet spot over the waterfall off for a number of days. We need to rip out all that stone, find where the leak is, and then come up with a creative way of patching the leak. So hard thing to do. We don't want our guests to see all that so much. We're hope to do that if the weather holds. That's another one of those, you know, moderately small but not that small project that we hope to do if weather holds either this November or early December.
Two very quick questions I think that can be answered because these are it, besides other wonderful things people are saying about your lecture. Carolyn would like to know if there's a bush, small yellow leaves, looks like pointillism. It's a great contrast in color and size. What is it?
Repeat the question.
The question,
Read in it.
okay, there is a bush that this month has small yellow leaves, which looks color and size of its leaves. And I am not sure which one that might be, Carolyn. So sometime when you're in the garden and you see me, come on over and take me to it.
Okay, last one from Ryan. I'm wondering how the row in the guest house tea house is going.
The answer to that question,
Frozen just for a second. There we go. Go.
I froze there for a second, I understand. A question from Ryan, who's a part of our tea study group and helps us out a lot. Thank you, Ryan, for all that you do. Wondering how the row in the guest house is going. And so the row is the sunken area in the floor, which you can see at the tea house. It's the sunken area in the floor for the winter tea. And so of the kama and furo. The furo is the brazier that holds the coals. And so the tea house already has a row. The guest house upper room does not. And I showed you the image earlier of Kagami-san measuring for the opening for the row and where it would fit into the tatami. And hopefully, Ryan, those tatami are on their way to Anderson Gardens. They're supposed to be on their way. And once we have them, then we'll have to modify the structural support, the floor joists under that floor to receive the box, which is about 18 inches square and about a foot or so deep. So we're working on it, and I hope to have that by spring. Let's see. Are there any other questions? That's it. Everybody, thank you so much for your patience and endurance.
Garden's open through Sunday.
Garden is open through Sunday, and there still are some nice colors out there. If you have time, please come and join us. If not, we will look forward to seeing you in the not too distant future. Thank you so much. Be safe and get out and enjoy nature. Thank you, everybody. Arigatou gozaimashita.